Hello again and welcome to the week ahead. Once again, I don't know how many times I have to say it, the bulls are in complete control as long as daily EMA 12 is continuing to hold. And it did. I think the only sign, like if you're looking for signs of a top, I feel like you're doing the wrong thing. But if you're looking for signs of a top, the only thing that I can see right here is that you've got RSI here at 72.69. And here it's 71.92, very slightly smaller. And meanwhile, we've got higher highs happening. So that's a slight divergence, but I just don't buy into that kind of thing. And if I see a divergence that I want to believe, to me, it needs to be a significant one. You know, I'd want to see a higher high with a lower high on RSI, but I don't know. I don't really play those things. I just play the trend, and the trend is still up. So really quickly, I'm going to go over a couple things. First of all, I'm going to just look at the week of trading on the Qs, because I feel like there was a trade of the week that happened here on Wednesday, and it was a banger. I missed it. Again, I feel like once every week or two this happens, and you got to catch these or you miss out. That being said, it was a great week for me. Finally broke a little bit of a losing streak I was on, because to me, to the way that I trade, the market was actually moving this week. It wasn't stuck in a range. It was finally breaking out of that range in both directions. It broke, you can see here on Tuesday, it broke out of the range as on a gap up, and then it gapped, and then it moved down from there to this low, set a daily higher low against daily EMA 12, and rallied hard from there. So bulls in control. And that type of movement, you know, we basically had to move up, move down, and move back up. That's what I need. That's what I need to win in this market. And so we got it, and I was thrilled and had a great week. So let's get into that. And I will say before I do that at the end of the video, I'm going to go over a new release that I put out this week for one of my most popular indicators called Multi-Time Frame RSI Grid, or as I just call it, the RSI Grid. And there's some pretty cool improvements in there, so I'm going to go over those at the end. And it is a free indicator. It is open source. You can get it on TradingView right now. Okay, so zooming out, one of the things that I've started to do recently, after I saw another trader doing this, and I really, really liked it, was zooming way out. And when I saw this trader doing it, he had a pretty simplified view of the chart. This is a pretty complex view I've got right here. So I'm going to hide a couple of these indicators. This is pretty cool. So when you zoom out on the Qs, and this works on pretty much any stock, but one of the things that I've been doing for a long time is I follow both the 5-day simple moving average and the daily EMA 12. And what you see here is that a lot of traders respect the 5-day. You know, you get a nice move up here in the stock. This is a 30-minute chart. And when it dips, it holds the 5-day over and over and over again. And then here you see it starts to break, right? So when it breaks the 5-day and then it breaks again, it's giving you a signal that you should probably pay attention to, because it's telling you that it's probably going to, you know, it's testing below, and it's either going to hold that and rush higher, or it might go a little bit deeper. It might keep testing whatever level it got to. So here you can see it was testing this level, it went a little bit lower here, and then over here it went basically to that level again. And what did it hit when it got there? The daily EMA 12. And if you look at where it connected with that, let me just put my drawings back on. When it hit that level, it coincided with this level. It had this whole area of balance here, and it had this was resistance over here. And here it even peaked above it and closed at it right there. So this 551.50, for whatever reason, was an important level. And look what it did when it got there. So, okay, so now you can see the days, right? So this is Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. Look at the balance we were in back here when I was having trouble trading. Of course I was having trouble trading. You got to move up, a nice move down, and a solid move up. So what was the trade of the week? It was this one right here. And how could you have gotten that trade? Well, look, it was testing these levels here before, right? And where did it stop? Daily EMA 12, prior resistance turned support, and tested one last time before a solid 2-day move up, right? That is money in the bank. And so I feel like the way to capture trades like this, which I missed, I will admit that I missed, is always doing this zoom out game where you're looking back, you're understanding what's the character of this chart. You know, this chart is telling you that it likes to hold the 5-day, but when it comes in lower, it's gonna, if you find confluence of you know, a prior resistance turned support that's been tested multiple times, and now it's rushing from a high down to that, and that also coincides with a moving average that's been supporting it on daily higher lows the whole way up, that's something you need to be paying attention to. So let's take a closer look at exactly what happened down on the lower time frame. Let's go right to the 1 minute and take a look at that. So here is that dip. And you know, what do we call this? There's, of course, this is an inverse head and shoulders, but it's also a V shape. It's a stair step on the 1 minute. And this blue line is the daily EMA 12. This red line is that resistance / support. So we had a solid move down that was extended, moving quickly with a stair step on the 1 minute. And And it also was hitting my extension signals. These little orange X's are signals that it's getting very extended on the current time frame, which is the 1 minute time frame, and the 5 minute time frame. So both of those were extended, multiple ATRs beyond the mean average of the trend. And so this to me is just a lot of signals that I should have been looking at this as a place to get a trade going. Even if I just was really protective and I waited for the stair-step break with a stop below there, like that was worth a trade, because even just as an intraday trade, that would have been money. I look at this and I think, oh, what if you missed that? There's a few different ways you can look at it. Are you a person who catches bottoms, or are you a person who waits for the trend to confirm? If you wait for it to confirm, what time frame are you waiting for it to confirm on? Are you looking for it to confirm on the 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute, 15 minute? You need to decide what works for you. For me personally, I tend to try to catch bottoms, and I put on a tiny amount of risk. I have very tight stops for huge reward. That means that I do stop out a lot. And I think I've gotten pretty good at protecting myself, where I know what I want to see, right? Like when it broke this stair step, it didn't do it on this candle. It didn't do it on the next candle. It tried, but couldn't do it. It did it on the next candle after that, right here, right? And so this candle here, I wouldn't have even been buying this one. I would have been watching this wobble. It opened here, went lower, and there on that break, that's when I would have tried it. And I would have been expecting at that point now, because it already did a little, what is that, like a 15 or 30 second balance down there. I'm like, if the bulls are going to show up, they got to show up now, and they got to show up fast. And I would basically be getting in here, stop below there. If it didn't immediately rocket up, I have a hotkey that splits my stop in half, and I would have grabbed half of my stop and moved it up to the low of this candle, and it would have said, like, if it starts to roll over here, I'm out, like, because it's extreme, but it's not totally extreme. We do have increased volume. You can see my RVOL indicator showing that, like, this candle here on the down was a massive, relatively high volume bar, much higher RVOL than normal. And then the next one was over here, another down candle, high RVOL. This one was a down candle, high RVOL. And when it hit this bottom, it was not climaxing. And that's why I didn't take this trade. I actually didn't realize that it was coinciding with the daily EMA 12, and I didn't realize that it was coinciding with that support. I was just looking at basically a naked chart with none of those signals for me on there. This line wasn't there, and this line wasn't there. I was just looking at price action, and all I saw was it was getting slightly extreme, but the down candles were more extreme than the up candles. And I would have expected, if it was a volume climax, that this might have been a larger candle, like a much taller candle with multiple ATRs as it flushed a low. And then the volume on that reversal would be really big. It wasn't that. I think that probably if I zoom out, I'll see that, like on the 5 minute chart, it probably was. Let me just put something here so I can recognize. I don't want to make it a sad face. Let's make it a happy face. I'll just put it here because this was a good thing that happened. Let's go to the 5 minute. Where'd it go? Here. So even then, yeah, it wasn't a massive candle. Like the candle, this candle here, even this candle here were bigger than this candle here. So it was more like a rounding bottom almost, right? So tough. It was a tough one. If you didn't have those other signals, the daily EMA 12 and the support resistance marked off on your chart. Either way, trade of the week. So let's say you didn't catch that bottom. How could you be thinking about getting this trade if you hadn't caught that bottom? The next thing that I do when I'm looking at trends is I think about, okay, this was a higher high, and then so we're trying to go higher, right? Higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, lower high, lower low. Tried to break above this level, couldn't do it. So it's still a lower high, another lower low, lower high, higher low. Try one last time and a rollover. So this is like indecision, right? This is bulls trying to win and having a hard time, and then you get this flush begin. And so when I'm looking at this, I'm always like, well, wait, how far have we moved? How much of this move have we retraced? So from here to here, once we make this move down, how far up do we come? And you can see the black line here is the 50% mark. So we got to 50%, just above it to 60%, tried to get higher, came lower. So that's, I generally think that if you get above 50%, the odds are good that you could get a higher low, but clearly we didn't get that. It tried to do it here on this candle. It came down, tried to go for the higher low right there, went up again, had a green candle, and then rolled over and failed. Again, got deeper. And so, at this point, there's been no signs that the bulls are going to show up to me. And I didn't even get the high volume down there that I was expecting. So I wasn't that excited. I also want to point out that this signal that I have here, this orange X, that's telling me that it's a little extended on the 5 minute and very extended on the 1 minute. But if it was a red X, that would be very extended on both. And so I was kind of waiting to pull the trigger until I got the red X, not realizing that we were at these key support areas. So didn't get it. So then we get a rally again, right? So let's move this let's check the distance that this retraced that move. Okay, so from here to here and then back up again, we got to 80% retracement. That the odds of a higher low from there are very good. And you know, if you look at here, what happens? So we get a high here, higher low, higher high, lower low. You're starting to think it might not work, and then boom, they show up with the jets. There's the high volume, and away it goes. And that was basically it. Now, if you had waited for this candle, you know, your risk reward would have been pretty different. It would have been something like this. So say you wait for them to turn on the jets there and really confirm it, and you want it to be over this high, right? So this is where you get in. You're really only going to want to risk to there. And I guess if you want to be really cautious, you've got to risk all the way to the low. And so if we zoom out a little bit, take a look at what that looks like. Just to get to 1-to-1 RR is right there. So, you know, if you're looking to get into a swing, that might be a good spot. If you're looking to get into a day trade, not the best spot. Like, I wouldn't have expected that after this flush it was going to do that. You know, if you want a really good trade, you've got to catch those lows and you've got to find those signals and get it right at those levels and just take your shot. That's what I've been finding is like a lot of what I do is just shot taking at areas where there's got a confluence of signals and I'm not waiting for any sort of confirmation like you got on this candle. And so I think that's kind of what you'd be stuck with, because that was to me the next best thing after that. So yeah, it's a hard one. I think you have got to be a pretty advanced trader to be able to get that kind of a trade. And where did it go from there? That rally was gold. And you know, it didn't have to be on Qs either. If you saw this happening on Qs, you could have traded some other symbol and done really well. This is a nice move up over the 2 days, and your risk if you had risked it down here was almost nothing. So you know, that would have been, I don't know, what is that? Let's see. So somewhere right down here, if you took your risk, put it below there, and you get all the way to here. If you sold it on the gap up on Friday, that is a 16.2 risk reward. That's very, very good. Okay, I digress. That's the trade of the week. So going into next week, I think it's the same as we've been saying all along. As long as daily EMA 12 is holding, the bulls are in complete control. If you want to get a good image of how that's going to come together, I really highly suggest that you zoom out. Zoom out, get rid of a bunch of the indicators that you normally look at, keep it simple, get down to 2 like this, and find clarity, right? I find that this helps me understand how the stock is trending. It helps me see their supports and resistances, and I combine that with the daily time frame because daily levels really do matter. Now that we are in this uptrend, I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing all along and finding stocks that are trending just like this, that have range, and trying to catch hourly higher lows on the daily, looking for stocks that are not too extended and like might come in, set a little quick higher low, and then continue up the next day, following these trends. Okay, I'm going to stop there. The next thing I'm going to talk about is my RSI indicator. I'm sure if you've heard of my TradingView account, if you've heard of me making indicators before, this is probably one that you already have, because it's definitely one of my most popular indicators after day trader levels. And what it does is it shows you the current RSI level across different time frames. And by default, I show you the 5-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute, 1 hour, 4 hour, 1 day, and 1 week. You can also add the 12-hour and the monthly if you like those. And then I give you some, stuff to manage where it appears on the screen, how large the text is, that kind of stuff, what format you want the RSI to appear in. Do you want it with a decimal place? Like how accurate do you want to show? Like that. By default, I just show round numbers. And then you have some colors here. So you can see here that on the daily time frame, QQQ is overbought. It's over 71. And standard overbought, oversold levels are defined right here. So 70 is considered to be overbought, so 70 and above. 30 and below would be oversold. And so because this is 71, it's changed the color of the text to orange. If it was above 75, which I consider it to be extreme overbought, then the background of the cell would change to this pink color and the text would change to white, so that you get a very distinct difference, and you can really see when multiple time frames are beginning to become overbought or oversold. And so the next thing I have here is this label that you see here, which says 30M, which means 30 minute, and it's got this little round circle here. So this is telling you that when price got to the top of this candle, the 30-minute time frame, the 15-minute time frame, and the 5-minute time frame were all overbought. So I call that being like a stack. So you're stacking multiple time frames being in overbought or oversold conditions, and then it throws a label in the chart for you to be able to see that. Of course, the same is true on the downside. So if you get oversold, which, where was the last time we were oversold? Over here. So here on this candle, we were hourly, 30-minute, 15-minute, 5-minute oversold. And here we were 30-minute, 15-minute, 5-minute oversold on those candles. So, you know, on this pre-market gap down here, we became oversold, or super stack oversold, as I call it. So that's cool. You can finally just see when there are signals. Now, the indicator also has alerts attached to it. So you can go add an alert, choose the indicator, RSI Grid, and in here, 30-minute super stack, 1 hour, 4 hour, 12 hour, 1 day, and oversold or overbought. So you can choose at what, like when the signal is firing, do you want it to alert you to that happening, so on a specific chart. Last but not least, this is a new change that I've made. So of course I changed the user experience in the settings, because the settings were very confusing before, I thought. So I've sort of clarified the RSI Grid settings. Everything that affects this table up here is right here at the top. Then we've got RSI OB/OS, so overbought or oversold levels, lines, and labels. So I've shown you the labels, that's these ones. And I've shown you the settings. So when it's standard, here's the levels for standard. When it's extreme, here's the levels for extreme, and you can adjust those as you see fit. And I have show labels at, and I have extreme. So I only show you these labels if those RSI levels are overbought or oversold at extreme levels, right? So these are not just hourly overbought or oversold. These are hourly, 30-minute, 15-minute, 5-minute, extreme overbought. That's what it's going to use. You can change it if you just want it to show on standard overbought or oversold. And then last but not least here, related to how those labels appear, I have show when. So show labels at this type of extension, show them when 3 or more time frames are overbought or oversold. And you can increase this number to make it, well, I only want to see it if 4 or 5, or I want to see it if 2. You know, it's up to you. I just have 3 because I feel like that's a decent signal. Finally, if you don't want to see these labels, you can just uncheck them. Like, let's say you only want to see oversold labels, you can uncheck overbought, and you'll see this one will disappear here in a second. You can also change the colors. If you don't like the pink and green colors that I've chosen, if you don't like the blue, pink, orange, you know, just adjust those here. You can change the size of the label. I just put it as this because I feel like I don't like things that are too intrusive or too big, so I keep it pretty small. Label style is label. You can change it to plain text. If you don't want to have this dark thing, it'll change it so that the text appears just like that. So you see a little 1H around above the circle. I do have another label here that says an option of none. If you select that, this is actually going to flip back to a solid background. And that's because I'm using this label style input as double duty for this label and for another one. I feel like when you're getting a super stack condition like this, you always want to know what time frame it was overbought or oversold up to. So I never hide it unless you specifically uncheck it here. But I'm going to get into the other labels I have here and how this affects those in a moment. And then finally, we have label offset. This does not relate to this. This label is not going to be offset. When I say label offset, I'm referring to a horizontal offset, which you'll see in a moment. So the next thing you see here is all the timeframes that were listed up here are listed again twice. Why is that? Well, up here, the first row is overbought and the second row is oversold. And so for here on the hourly time frame, you want to see, wait, how overbought or oversold was it? You can check 5-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute, and 1 hour, because you know it was overbought up to the 1 hour. And in a moment, all of these lines or plots will appear. Okay, so you can see here, now these pink lines are appearing. They're colored the same as the label color here. That's where I grabbed the colors from. And you can see what RSI was doing when it got there. So that you can see that all of these different RSI levels were below the peak of this value here. And what you're seeing on the labels is it tells you which ones you're looking at. So this is the line for 5-minute RSI 75. And I'm saying that if RSI gets to 75, this is where price will be when it gets there. And so you can sort of use this as a level. You can measure how close am I to price reaching an RSI level of 75. It would have to get to here. And same for all these other ones. So this is a new way of measuring this stuff. Previously I just used the actual RSI values, but now I'm using the candlesticks and their peaks and troughs to determine at the peak of that candlestick, you know, which RSI levels was it above. And this helps you to sort of look and see and understand why one of those might be triggering. In the previous version of this indicator, it was just using the RSI levels to determine if it was overbought or oversold. And the bug or problem that I kept encountering is, say at this one right here, at the peak of this candle, it might have been hourly extreme overbought. But when the candle closed and it was lower, the RSI level was different. But the RSI level that I get when I'm querying on this candle, it would be the value at close, not at peak. And so that was giving me tons of problems as I tried to figure out across multiple time frames which RSI levels did we get to at the peak of the candle. So that's why I switched to using the price levels instead, to give me a really clear picture of when we were at the peak. Were we above all the RSI levels that matter, enabling us to call it a super stack, or when we're at a trough, were we below all the RSI levels that matter, making it be a oversold super stack. And that's it. So hopefully this is a useful improvement for everybody. I think I do have another indicator called RSI levels. So if you go in here and search RSI levels, here it is, RSI levels multi-time frame. That's the one that you would find. And you add that one on. That one does the same thing as those plots that I just showed you, except it has a little bit more stuff to it. So you'll notice that these plots are a lot smoother. If you put this one on over top of this one, you'll notice that the plots that you get with each are different. So let's just do an example. Let's say I put on hourly overbought here on the grid, and then I go over here and I just put on hourly overbought on the other one. This is actually extreme, so I'm going to put it to standard, and you'll see what happens. So you see the pink one from the grid is a little, it moves around more, right, than the other one. And that's because with the other one, I give you the ability to smooth out the line. And I can't do that with the RSI grid. This is probably TMI, but I can't do that with the RSI grid because it would require another set of queries to do that. That smoothing is done when you request the data. And to get accurate data, I can't use the smoothing. So the most important thing to me is this grid, and to get that grid printed well, I need to pull the most accurate data. And so I can't do the smoothing when I'm doing that. So otherwise these become wildly inaccurate. So anyway, if you want to have these levels on there all the time, I suggest still using the RSI levels indicator because it's just smoother lines that are nicer to look at. But if you just want to have a single indicator and you don't care about appearance too much, this is a nice one. So now you can come in here and you can just flick on one of these levels if you want to know, wait, I'm looking for hourly oversold conditions to catch a daily high or low. I just want to see where is that going to be. Check that box, and then you'll see where hourly oversold is going to be right there. And you can watch for that in your trading. All right, that's it for me. Have a great week and happy trading. Hey, if you like the content on my videos and you like the indicators I produce on TradingView, please remember to like and subscribe.